Central and Inner Asia. If Japan balanced slope and water, and China built a civic archive of sin, the plateau traditions followed both inwards, high-altitude ritual cleanness, and intense focus on the intermediate state, bardo, and skyward disposal that returns the body to the ecosystem, all shaped by shamanic Tengris roots and later Buddhist detail. Gates and thresholds, edges of wind and stone, death at altitudes. Wind is the first undertaker here. It erases footprints, steals breath, and pulls at the helms or shrouds, like an impatient ferryman. On the high plateau, the world has fewer walls, only ridges, passes, and the sky so near, it feels like a roof pulled back. It is in these exposed places that the boundary between the living and what comes after thins. The landscape itself becomes a threshold. Imagine a narrow planet at dawn, frost-etched in the hollows, a lone body wrapped in cloth laid out on a slab of stone. Around it, people move with a particular economy, not to hurry gestures of grief elsewhere, but careful, composite motions that have learned to work with altitude and cold. The dead are not hidden away. Out here, curling one's hands around the chest of a corpse is to risk the birds and the weather bearing witness. Exposure is the technology of the thresholds. And this is sky burial, Chator, and its cousins on the Mongolian steppe. It is a ritual economy of openness. The preparation of the body is practical and sacred at once. Prayers and offerings, the measured cutting of cloth, the removal of garments that belonged to a life now folded away. In some traditions, a specialist team, sometimes called Hokyapa, the body breakers, assists with the careful dismembering that allows the flesh to be offered to birds and the elements. There is an art and a restraint to this. Each motion is a bridge, a deliberate handing over. But why hand a body to the vultures? Well, the answer is ecological and metaphysical layered into a single act. You see, in a place where the earth is frozen and fuel is scarce, burial and soil is not always practical. But that pragmatic truth dovetails with belief. By returning the body to sky and scavenger, one hastens the separation of flesh and consciousness. The birds do nothing accidental. They are part of the ritual choreography, the final communal aid to consume what anchors the soul to the world of bodies. And the soul, or more precisely in Tibetan thought, consciousness, does not simply evaporate, no. It steps into the bardo, an intermediate liminal state, described in detail by the Bardo Tödel, the so-called Tibetan Book of the Dead. The bardo is a kind of inner landscape that follows bodily death or corporeal demise, a series of visions, trials, and chances for recognition. For those who remain attached, it can be bewildering. For those guided by ritual speech and prayer, it can be a passage with landmarks. Thus, relatives and monks will chant and read, not to coax a corpse, but to address the consciousness that now finds itself between doors. The rites on the ridge are both communal and pragmatic. Offerings are arranged, grains, tsampa, aromatic juniper, and ritual speech is layered like insulation against the cold. A monk may open the bardo and begin a reading meant to name what the deceased will encounter. Luminous deities, terrifying apparitions, the pull of rebirth. The chanting is not theatrical, it is directional. It points, like a rich line, towards what comes after. Visually, the motives are stark and elemental. A windswept crest, a shroud slowly loosening, vultures circling, patient as fate, a monk's hand turning a page as rhetorists chant into the cooling air. Simple gestures that stand as thresholds in themselves. There is no sensationalism here, only an economy of gestures, shaped by altitude and belief. In this high country choreography, death is neither secret nor scandal. It is a ceremony that trusts the elements, that lets the wind and the sky do the last unmaking, while human hands and human words tend to the thresholds. What begins with a closing shroud on a stone ends with the lifting of consciousness into the bardo. A passage not of one door, but of many, each thin as a ridge, and each waiting to be named. Transit and Psychopomps, the bardo's voice, the shaman's drums. If the sky burial is the door and the bardo is the corridor, only rather less tidy and rather more prone to surprising and lighting, Tibetan texts map this corridor on stages. The moment of death, the appearance of luminous visions called dharmata, and a sequence of bewildering forms that test recognition, all understood as opportunities either for liberation or for another round of rebirth. Now, monks read aloud from the bardo liberation through hearing, because the tradition holds that a consciousness adrift can still answer the voice. These readings name what the dying mind will meet. They describe the bright, the beautiful, and the terrifying, offering language as a landmark. If recognition takes place, liberation follows. If not, the journey continues. Think of it as an ancient, rather stern audio guide for an unexpectedly scenic afterlife, on the steppe and in shamanic communities. The same aim is reached by different means. A kam or shaman takes up the drum. Its pulse becomes a surrogate heartbeat, a steady line the soul can follow. Through drumming, singing, calling names, and enactments, the shaman seeks to fetch, steady, or steer the wandering consciousness, to keep it from mistaking a wrathful apparition for the final boarding call. Lamas and shamans occupy the same functional niche. Psychopomps, professional midwives for transition. They do not always agree on the dress code, but they do agree on the job. The cosmology behind sky burials matters here. Returning flesh to birds is not mere practicality dressed up as pietism. It is a sacred offering and an ecological psychopomp. Vultures and scavengers participate in the unmaking, hastening the separation of body and consciousness, so that the bardo can be encountered more clearly, not clouded, but attached. The journey through the bardo is paradoxical. Visions can terrify, but they also grant recognition. Wrathful forms may be invitations in disguise. Ritual speech, song, and drum are not theatrical extras. They are practical tools to orient our dissolving minds. And for the living, these rites focus grief into action, words and rhythm that aim the departed and, incidentally, stop relatives from wandering about on cold ridges, looking hopelessly for the right exits. Court and inhabitants. No single courtroom, mudas, wrathful deities, and skykin. You see, there's no single celestial courthouse here. In Indo-Tibetan worlds, the after-death scene is less a judge's bench and more a crowded theater of revelation. Luminous Buddhas, wrathful deities, protective spirits, and the local skykin who have watched your family sheep for generations. Their common work is not to punish like a celestial magistrate, but to reveal what the mind already is, and, if fortune and recognition align, to offer liberation. The visions that appear in the bardo come in two principal flavors. First, the peaceful, luminous manifestations, radiance of clarity that, when recognized, can show a consciousness its own true nature. Recognition here is the winning ticket. See the light and you may be free. Then there are the wrathful forms, terrifying, fierce, and theatrically overdressed. Not cosmic bullies, but shock tactics designed to jar the unseeing mind into recognition. Both are pedagogues, not prosecutors. Alongside these, Pan Buddhist figures move a more local caste. On the steppe and in Tengri's influenced regions, Sky Spirit and Ancestor Loki have long claims on the living and the dead. A clan shaman negotiates with Tengri and household spirits. Offerings on a wind-bedded altar are reminders that belonging is social as well as spiritual. These spirits hold memory for the clan, and their engagement with the departed ties individual fate back into family history and communal obligation. The result is plural, not uniform. One Whaley's bardo might be heavily shaped by monastic liturgy and scripture. Another's will be seasoned with drum song and ancestor naming. Some communities emphasize mantra and meditative recognition. Others emphasize retrieval, naming, and negotiated placement in clan memory. The pantheon, then, functions less like a single court and more like a mosaic of auditors and guides. Each figure a mirror held up to the mind, each ritual a different way of helping the mind see. So, image this sequence. A sudden flare of luminous faces that patiently invite recognition. A violent, roaring deity who seems intent on terrifying you into lucidity. A shaman's hand scattering offerings beneath a tiny frost-rimmed clan. Together, they form a chorus whose job is simple and humane: to expose, to test, and, when possible, to liberate. There is no neat verdicts, only opportunities. And, if you're fortunate and attentive, a door that opens because you finally recognize the thing that had been standing in front of you all along. Judgment, reward, and cultural function, liberation, rebirth, and the last gifts. The plateau is remarkably practical about death. Here, rites do three jobs at once. They try to open the door to liberation, nudge the very consciousness toward a favorable rebirth, and return the body to the ecosystem with a final, generous gesture. For the committed practitioner, the bardo is an opportunity, a last exam in which recognition of luminous truth can mean liberation. For most, it is a transitional journey shaped by the tug of karma and the kindness of those who remain. Chanting merit transfer and ritual speech act like a communal helping hand, shifting probabilities toward a better rebirth. Monks recite, families and give offerings, and the work of the living literally changes the itinerary of the dead. Then there is sky burial, economy and ethic folded together. The corpse becomes food for birds, an ecological return, and a moral statement. In a land where soil is frozen and fuel is scarce, burying in the earth can be impractical. Offering the body to sky and scavenger is both sensible and sacred. It embodies Buddhist non-attachment and step reciprocity. A last gift to the world that once sustained the life, now ended. A ritual also has a social ledger. The 49-day sequences of recitation, the rites of offering, the shamans' visitations. These are structured time for grief, for memory work, and for social repair. Performing rites keeps ancestors from wandering as restless stories. It re-entangles the departed with clan history. Naming someone allowed at the hearth is as much an administrative act of belonging as it is devotion. It says loudly and finally, "You are part of us still." Taken together, these practices are neither sentimental nor cold. They are a civic architecture for death, theological, ecological, and social solutions braided into a single ritual economy. A family chants to aim our minds. Vultures complete the unmaking, elders read their names so memory does not fracture. The Platon's last gift is therefore threefold: liberation offered, rebirth ameliorated, and the body returned in courtesy to the open world that raised it.